Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. This is KMMU.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Goud Crowd. I am your host, Goud, and today we're going to start off with a little back to school special. We'll have on Back Home with Brandy, our regular contributor from my home state of Illinois, to discuss again an issue that she's facing with her daughter in the schools out there. And then we'll also have on Monica Wilbur to talk about maybe ideas for handling that, because Monica is our education expert. So let me bring them both on and we will start the discussion.
Hi,
okay, well, hello ladies, welcome to the show.
It's happy to be part of the crowd.
Okay, Brandy, do you want to give us a quick summary of what you're dealing with your daughter in school?
Yeah, so I live in a school district that is heavily minority majority. My daughter went to a grade school that was probably 70 to 80% Middle Eastern. And then she moved on to a junior high that was more like maybe 50 or 60%, but she's been the minority the entire time. Clearly, as a white child, if you look at me, she's pretty pasty. And so we've had some challenges being the minority in the schools. Everybody's always said that, once the minorities are in, there's diversity, everything will work out great, but it isn't really how it works out. Like in grade school, she got reprimanded for drawing a Christmas tree because Christmas trees were offensive. And she wasn't allowed to wear any Christmas, like no Santa shirts, no Halloween shirts with cats or witches, only fall or winter themed. And we had all these rules of all these things that would be deemed offensive that she could not do. Then we got to junior high and it got a little better. She was actually allowed to talk about Christmas, and they actually acknowledged that Christmas was a holiday. Now in grade school, they totally taught you about Diwali and Eid and all these other holidays, but you weren't allowed to talk about any Christian ones. In junior high, they allowed you to talk about it, but she was still the minority, which led to her being called white kid number 1 or white kid number 2. Depending on how many white kids were in the class. Apparently there wasn't any more than 2 white kids in most classes, so you were either 1 or 2. She was called a colonizer, a slave owner, just basically talked to like she was responsible for everything that ever happened in the world. She would come home and talk about how like only Black people were slaves and there was no other slaves and they've had it harder than anybody else. So I had to teach her that there was more than just, one type of slave, that almost everybody's been slaves at one point. We have Jewish ethnicity that she has to hide because she said that if people find out, they would be very upset. They wouldn't want to talk to her. They're going to give her a harder time. So she's afraid to tell people. She has a little friend who's German and they call her a Nazi. So it's been quite cruel. And the advertisement of like, diversity is going to bring like all this harmony has not really happened that way. We've actually just become the minority and everybody's quite horrible to her. And the school kind of overlooks it because they're only focused on what happens to the brown or Black kids, not so much the white kids. We even had an incident where a student stood up in class and said, "I don't hate people, just people from Israel." And all the teacher said was, "Please sit down. That's really mean." Nobody got reprimanded. That was it. And that's kind of how the school rolls. Now, today was first day of high school. High school is a 50-50 split this year. We're 50 minority majority, 50% white. So I'll be interested to see how it plays out. But it's the same kid she had junior high with. They're all going to high school with her. So it might play out kind of the same with kind of what they're saying to her and how they're making her feel guilty all the time. So any opinions or thoughts will be appreciated.
Okay. Monica, do you want to first maybe just start with a quick introduction about your background, and then we would love to hear your thoughts on this situation.
Okay, sounds great. I'm Monica Wilbur, and I am a co-founder of Higher Ground. It is a platform that focuses on education issues and basically how to help your kid and your family rise above the system and we focus a lot on the systemic problems that are prevalent throughout. It doesn't matter where you go, throughout the nation, throughout the globe. A lot of local education has been hijacked by global interests. I ran for the State Board of Education here in Utah a couple of years ago, and I am a policy analyst, and so that's what I do. I focus on education. That's my jam. So very interesting question you have here, Brandy. And I really think the first thing I want to ask you is, have you complained or made any sort of formal complaint to, first of all, administrators, teachers, anybody close to the situation?
So in grade school, I did express, I volunteered for the fall festival, which you couldn't have any signs of Halloween at. And I got reprimanded because I had to use like the little jack-o'-lanterns you collect candy in. I had to use those for bozo buckets, but I had to make sure all the faces were turned so the kids couldn't see them. And one of the faces turned around as the kids threw the little ball in. And I got reprimanded and then explained that, this could cause a big problem. People could be very offended. They might get phone calls because of it. And I expressed then to the principal, go ahead and give him my personal number if you want to. Like, this should not be a big deal. Lots of kids celebrate Halloween. And I was basically told this is a huge problem, that we cannot be doing this. And then I was not allowed to be at any more fall festivals or anything like that for the rest of her time in grade school. Kind of got blacklisted when I expressed. I think they put me on a list of people that were just too volatile, I guess, to follow the rules. But that was about as far as I got. I kind of realized it was on deaf ears. The school actually had a diversity group to ensure it stays diverse, but the whole group was made of, brown people. So I was like, well, how much diverse do you need to be? Like, you guys are running the show here. And they were kind of making sure their interests were heard. I actually did it was a multicultural night, and I actually did American culture with my daughter, but I was warned that, like, you have to watch your sign, because I just did basics, like baseball and the stuff that makes America, apple pie and stuff. But I was warned that I need to keep an eye on the sign, because if I leave my booth, somebody might do something to it. And I had a lot of families eyeballing my poster board. So I was a little fearful if I left it, it would get destroyed. But I don't think they were super thrilled I did American culture, because almost everybody else had like some sort of Middle Eastern culture, or possibly like Chinese would be like the next group of people that are there. But I kind of got the sense they don't want to hear it. So
yeah. Okay, so as far you've mentioned things, but you haven't necessarily like made a formal complaint, like in writing.
I have not done a formal complaint in writing to the school. I wasn't sure how to go about it, because when you ask my daughter questions, it's just like, well, all the kids. Well, all the kids is a lot of kids, So it's like trying to figure out how do you report it? Like, do you just tell them in a letter it's most of the kids? Or do you need to get names and classes and details of when it's happening? And it's kind of happening all day, so it's kind of hard. Or on the bus, or it happened on their trip to DC. Like, it's hard to pinpoint how to exactly report it, or if general is okay.
Okay. So one of the things I always recommend to parents is to absolutely start creating a paper trail, document. And I know that sounds tedious, but it's really one of the best ways to establish if there is a pattern of behavior. And then the second thing you want to do is figure out, where is that pattern coming from? Are we talking students who are doing something where the teachers are not being responsive, or is it a pattern of behavior from teachers, administrators, from school personnel? Like, where are we seeing the dots being connected along the way? And again, that may sound a little bit tedious. You don't necessarily have to establish patterns. You can have like a single egregious experience or a situation where it is very blatant, is very obvious that somebody's acting in a discriminatory way. It's funny because you mentioned diversity, and really it's a one-way street in the schools, and they never act as if the white culture or Christian culture or it all just depends. It all falls along a totem pole of hierarchy all of its own, and kids who are white kind of fall to the bottom of that. And I've heard story after story from parent after parent about how their kid went to school and was treated in a discriminatory manner because they were white. My daughter's boyfriend was telling me stories about how just being in the classrooms and teachers would say things like, well, you're a white male, your opinion, doesn't mean that much. Or other students would say that and it would get a pass, right? A friend of mine in my neighborhood, her daughter went to go play out on the playground, and she wanted to play soccer with a bunch of the Mexican students. And she said, hey, can I play? And one kid turned to her and said, no, you're white. And then he turned back and continued to play soccer. Now, is this a one-off? Is this is this just kind of an aberrant experience, or is this something that teachers are witnessing or that they have been made aware of that they do not choose to address? And so that's probably the first question is, where is this coming from? Where am I seeing it? And if you document it as it happens, then you know what, I would take my complaint at that point. I would take it, they always tell you, take it to the teacher first, or take it to the person who's closest to the situation. So you could take it to the teacher. But I think it's very important to have it in writing and then to request for a response in writing as well. That gives you some paper trail. And then depending on how they respond, I would also copy in the administration, and unless you wanted to address them directly because they are the closest person to the situation. But
I'm guessing from previous experience, I probably won't get a response, because if Goud remembers back when we had the trans kid that was competing at her track meet, and I wrote a letter about that. I submitted it. I went to the board meeting. I spoke, because this was clearly a boy. It looked like a boy. There was nothing girlish about it. And it was running again the 7th grade girls track meet and winning everything. And I got no response. And when I spoke before the board, they just dismissed me. Like, they didn't even really listen. And then I got no response. So I'm not super hopeful. I'm definitely willing to try if this continues as a high school issue. But it didn't look good. I live in an area where it's so left-leaning that they don't even want to hear it. And I'm sure the teachers see something. If a bunch of kids are calling people slave owners and stuff, I'm sure they hear it. I mean, in grade school, they were the ones disciplining you for making a Christmas tree, or you can have a pumpkin for fall, but not a jack-o'-lantern. And they had all the rules that they were enforcing. So, which I did, by the way, on my American culture poster. I had a Christmas tree on there. I had a jack-o'-lantern. I put all the things we're not supposed to put on there. Just to drive that point home, Goud.
I remember that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. There's no reason why you can't. I mean, student freedom of expression has been legally protected for religious expression or otherwise. Has been it gets great legal protections. Okay, so for them to tell you can't, a child can't wear a shirt with a Christmas tree or something that says Christmas, they're breaking the law.
They wouldn't let her hang. She drew a Christmas tree with ornaments and lights, and they wouldn't let her hang it. They made her redraw it as a regular pine tree so it would not offend anybody.
Okay, so they're violating her First Amendment rights, and that is a very blatant First Amendment violation. She has that right of expression. Now, the schools, on the other hand, maybe they don't have that same level of First Amendment expression as the students do, but the students have that right of positive religious expression, where they can wear a T-shirt that says I am a proud Catholic, or I love Jesus, or whatever it may be. And they can do that. They can't stop them from doing that. Now, a lot of times what they've done is they kind of flip the script and they say, well, that constitutes discriminatory behavior in and of itself, when really discriminating against the student for having that form of expression is the actual discriminatory behavior. So the biggest thing, when you see something like this, and you've created a paper trail, basically, and no response is a response, even though it doesn't feel like it, right? But it's like, okay, I have done my due diligence. I've sent in the complaint. I've requested a response by this date and this time. So you set the parameters and the expectations. You teach them how to treat you, essentially. Now, if they ignore you at that point, I would go straight to Department of Justice civil rights complaint. Okay. So under Title VII, I think it's under Title VII. No, 6.
Are you writing that down, Goud?
I am.
Thank you, because I might need you to repeat it back. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, under Title VI, schools have a responsibility to protect students from like pervasive harassment and bullying based on race or ethnicity or other immutable characteristics, right? Identity characteristics there. And that's the federal law that basically bans that in the schools and the colleges, anything based on race, color, national origin. And so, and it covers everything in education, like the academics, the sports, the programs, the admissions, all that sort of thing. We've seen complaints like that being made in Utah, not necessarily, it was some on the right and some on the left as well. And you can actually go to the Department of Justice's website and you can look for your own state and see how many Title VI complaints are open right now in your state and to which districts they apply. So you can actually go look that up. And I would totally make that complaint, have your documentation in hand and go with it. And if you feel like this is, again, a pervasive pattern, or if you have an egregious instance, take that complaint to the Department of Justice, because there is no justification for what they're doing to your daughter for what you've experienced. I've seen, my son, when he was in, I believe it was his 8th grade honors social studies class, his teacher got up on the first day and said, look at this book. Look at these names on the book. Look at who wrote this book. And it was something like, Joseph Lieberstein and Samuel Taylor or something. And she says, what does that sound like? And all the kids were like very confused. They're looking at each other. And she says, it sounds like 2 white men. We are not going to read a text written by 2 white men. And then she basically said, we are going to listen to diverse opinions and identities. And it was very offensive. So I called the school and I made a complaint to the assistant principal. And he's like, well, I'm a white guy. And I kind of feel like that's terribly wrong. But their solution was for my son to change classes.
Of course.
It was
not surprised one bit.
Right. It does not surprise. And so a lot of these times, these teachers get protected, right, by the administration, unless it's like really egregious and they are, sexually molesting children and get caught in the act, at which point they'll just pass the trash. But for the most part, they protect these teachers because the teachers, check all the boxes for being competent or competent or for meeting the standards, right, that the schools have already set, which are already woke. The problem that we have here, again, is a systemic problem. You got pedagogies, you got policies, you got practices, you got programs. All of these things combine to create what I would call is a hostile learning environment for students who do not fit the diversity, equity, and inclusion checkboxes. And you've seen that clearly. I've seen it in Utah. I don't think that it's unique to any place. I think it's endemic. And that is how the teachers are trained. This is how policymakers kind of work. They give them the leeway to do these things. And so, yay, there you go. Thanks, Dwayne, for getting that up, or Dowd, I'm not sure, but you can actually make a complaint there. I've worked with, and I've worked with people in the Trump Department of Justice. They've been pretty good and what I would call very responsive. But I don't know how many complaints they have to go through. I know Trump's DOJ went in and shut down Broward County's, this is in Florida, Broward County's Latinos in Action program for discriminatory practices. They really should come to Utah. Like, a complaint needs to be made here. We have a current state board member who said, no, Latinos in Action is not DEI. It's just helping kids who are just underprivileged and underserved in their communities. But when you go look through their literature, when you go look at their practices, when you see how it's implemented, you're like, oh yeah, that is really not the case. They do practice in many ways, and they advocate very publicly. I'm not, this is anything anybody could go look up. They advocate for preferential treatment for Latinos on the base of them being Latinos. And technically, what did we pass? HB 261 here in Utah, Goud, and it was supposed to get rid of these diversity, equity, and inclusion preferential practices, and it didn't. It just kind of forced them to go underground and rebrand. Mm-hmm. This is going to be how it is in education, probably until the great meteor of death, hits the earth and, creates a whole new public school system of I don't know, of cockroaches. I have no idea, but this is the situation we're in simply because the people who run the public schools are trained activists, and they're trained in the pedagogies of Freire, D'Angelo, what's his name? That one guy who, sorry, I can't even remember his name. He's a really egregious guy. But all the anti-racist crowd, right? And this has been going on in the schools for literally decades. It all really began back with the Fabian Society folks who were basically trying a way to kind of rebrand communism. And because at that point, communism was associated with like economic identity, right? The proletariat versus the bourgeoisie. They had to create a new minoritized set of people. And so they did it through cultural Marxism, which is, okay, let's find everybody who is kind of out on the outskirts of society, women, Blacks, gays, and they just made a big list, and then they started kind of elevating these identity groups, these political identity groups. They started getting more power in government, in the schools, you name it, and their pedagogies have stuck. So it's kind of a rough go for these kids when they just want to go and see their friends, and do art.
Well, one of the complaints I had was not even to do with the whole minority majority, but so for the entire 6th, 7th, 8th grade, every morning they watch 10 minutes of CNN Kids. Yeah. And they put that in the classroom, but there's no access for parents. So I don't know what CNN Kids says, but they start their day off with 10 minutes of it.
Yeah. So in Utah here, and I don't know what your situation is in Chicago, but recently there was a lawsuit that was successfully won in Chicago. It was Hudgens versus Board of Education of City of Chicago. And that situation involved I believe it was a Muslim student. Don't quote me. It could have been a Hindi student, but a Muslim student who was being subjected to certain classroom rituals, Middle Eastern rituals of mindfulness and meditation that she recognized as being religious in substance. And so she felt very uncomfortable that, and they told her, hey, you don't even have to participate. You can sit on the side of the room while we do these things. But the very fact that they created this kind of coercive culture in the classroom led to her parents suing the district successfully for infringing on her religious rights. And so you gave some examples of the same thing, basically. And in Utah, we have a law 53G 10205 that it doesn't address the positive religious expression. It addresses negative religious expression. So what I mean by that is when a student is feeling coerced or feels like they are asked to participate against their will or conscience in a certain activity, and it could offend their conscience or their religious belief, that they have a right to not participate in that activity. And the school may or may not decide to provide an alternative, but in either instance, they cannot penalize or discriminate against the student for not participating in that activity. And whatever alternative they offer, it has to be something that, again, does not re-offend the conscience, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what your laws are. You can look at your state constitution and you can see if there's any such thing in your own statutes. Regardless, a student cannot be forced to participate in an activity or should not be able to be forced to participate in an activity that offends the conscience. And our bill or our law covers not just the student's right of conscience, but the parent's right of conscience as well. And that's really important, because a lot of times what they'll try to do is a student will go to the student will go and or the parent will say, I have a problem. And then they'll say, okay, well, we already talked to your student. Your student doesn't have a problem. So they actually play the students against the parents in these situations, when in reality, your child is still your child. Your right to parent your child is inviolate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
is it as part of the issue there, though, that you just want access to that, what they're showing every morning?
Well, it seemed weird that they were showing it, and it's not really mentioned that they're showing it. I found out from my child. And when you go to their classrooms and stuff, that there's just no way to find out what it is. I kind of felt it was a little bit sneaky. It felt, underhanded. Like, why aren't you posting what they're watching? And, my daughter's so young that she'll take anything that's, put on the TV as truth. So.
Sure. Well, and you know what? I mean, that's just the reality of today's classrooms. I mean, a lot of these kids sit down in front of their Chromebooks. They're fed dynamic tech-generated content, right? Changes on the fly. You'll never know what your kid is actually learning, because you can't really go back and recapture that. Like if they're at a YouTube page and there's advertisements on the side, one day those same advertisements might not be there the next day, depending on the algorithms.
Well, and they change class names too. So get this, like what we knew as history is now at her high school, human geography.
Yes.
I don't know what that means.
What?
Yes, it's supposed to be her regular history class, but it's called human geography.
We've had human geography here ever since my kids were in high school, and that was like about 10 years ago. So
what is it?
Human geography is basically social studies. And it is.
Why isn't that called social studies?
It is whatever they say it is. It is what human geography is. They talk about like maybe sociological factors, geopolitical issues, world religions. It can go on. It's socioeconomic differences between nations, etc. And here's the funny thing is that when my son was taking human geography, they had a world religions unit. Well, the teacher gets up there, and this is an honors world geography, or excuse me, human geography class. So she gets up there and she says, okay, there are three major world religions, Christianity and Islam and Judaism. And you guys are, I think, pretty much all Christian in here, so we're not going to cover it. Go Google anything you want to know. You don't already know. And then she said for Judaism, and she sent them to the Anti-Defamation League's website. That was their main resource. And but Islam, it was covered in great depth, very fawning depths. It's a religion of peace. It honors and upholds women's rights. It was, I'm like, wow. Well, what is this new Islam? That's like awesome.
I'm sorry.
I wish that was true.
Yeah,
I know. I was like, what? I feel bad. Like when I walk my dogs, there's a Muslim family, and like the little boys and girls are playing outside, and the girls are like covered, and it's hot out. It's like 90 degrees. They're young girls, and the boys are just playing in regular clothes. And every time I walk by, I kind of get a little outraged. I'm like, these poor little girls, like, have to wear all this clothing, and they don't have the burqas where you just see the eyes, but they have like the whole, just like you see the face and everything's covered, and it's 90 degrees out.
Yeah,
I don't understand how that's women's rights. It just seems backwards to me.
I agree with you. I feel like it is backwards, but we humor a lot of things in order to like save people's like feelings, right? When in reality, it would be probably better to just address them head on and not tippy toe around it, but or whitewash it, which is what's happening in schools right now. You see a lot of not just historical revisionism, but I think a lot of a lot of narrative making. That's what I would call it, narrative making, where they are trying to inculcate students with a view of the world and with worldviews that align with pretty much all this global transformation agenda. And it doesn't just happen culturally, it also happens economically. I like to say that the schools, like the political right, likes to exploit kids for economic purposes, and the political left likes to exploit them for social agendas. And wherever they overlap in that Venn diagram, okay, that's where you see a lot of the action going on. You'll see programs in school like U-Science, which is an AI algorithm-driven student. It's like a student aptitude assessment tool where they can line kids up with the jobs that they think these kids should be having based on the workforce industry's needs. Okay, so what it's Soviet-esque jobs programs on steroids and on tech, but there's a huge DEI component too, and they will match these kids and say, oh, you know what, and well, the algorithm will say, gosh, there are 50,000 tourism jobs in this area that are not getting that we were going to need filled. And so they'll try to like shift kids and just push them into these pipelines where it's like, oh, you'd be great in the hospitality industry, where the kid really has zero interest, right? Zero interest. And I've had multiple kids tell me that they were taking these personality assessments, so to speak, and being told that they should be doing things that they're like, I don't even, it's not even me. Like, it's not even me. Why would you even suggest that? But then the counselors come along and they feel pressured to put these kids into career and technical education programs because the state has mandated them. And that's the economic agenda, right? But then again, they all try to elevate the DEI component in this economic picture. And so it's just bad. It's like bad juju. So
because then they'll replace you with foreigners. So hey,
Oh,
you
yeah.
should be in hospitality, and then next thing you know, they'll be pulling in J1 workers to replace you. So the whole thing is like
Pointless, huh?
Actually, there is a point to it, because the more people you can get in that industry, the more you depress wages, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Because then your worker pool has exponentially expanded. So you're like, oh, well, gosh, I got 300 people applying for one job as opposed to 30. I can offer them peanuts.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to read my little read thing. Give me a second here. So you are listening to KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. We are live on, let's see, YouTube, Rumble, X, and on our website, kmmu.org. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button on your favorite platform. We are at Media Utah. You can call us too, and you can talk to Brandy, Monica, and me at 435-900-8595. Thank you for listening. I did want to mention that, Brandy and Monica, they had that song in the 90s, remember?
We did. The Boy Is Mine.
Yeah.
We have a song? What the heck?
Yeah, the two artists, Brandy and Monica, and there was The Boy Is Mine, and they fight over a boy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't want to play it because I feel like there'll be a
1998.
copyright issue.
It's 1998. Find it.
You can play like 15 seconds of it, Goud. I need to know what my song with Brandy is. I don't even
You've never
remember
heard the
it.
song before?
No, I don't think
It's not
so.
particularly well done, but it's pure 1998.
Yeah, it's actually not even worth listening to because it's not a good song.
It's not a good song at all.
You're not
But it was
missing
a big hit, though. They made a lot of money off of that song.
Yeah, they're actually touring now.
Now I'm gonna have to go find it. I gotta know.
Yeah.
I feel like I missed out on a piece of important pop culture history there. So
it was like summer of '98. It was everywhere.
Yeah,
But I refused. I did not sing
Illinois.
the Brandy part. I sung only the Monica part. Because I feel like I had to get into a new character. And then I think Brandy ran over somebody later on and killed them, didn't she?
Oh,
I
wow.
think so. That ended
Yeah, she
her
had some
career
sort of auto
for a while.
accident and killed somebody. I really want to steer clear of that one.
Yeah.
Dang.
And then
Okay.
her brother is the one that had the video.
The sex tape with the Kardashian, yeah.
Yeah.
But she didn't get more famous off of. Only she got more famous. I feel bad. What's his name? RJ or whatever? Ray J?
Something like that, yeah.
See, we don't even know his name.
You guys could
So
like
sad.
have a gossip column. Like this is like great lore, 90s lore. I don't even remember like any of this. I don't know where I was. I
But
think
God and I grew up together, so we lived this in the 90s.
It's true, yeah.
And I won't
You were in
tell-
Utah, Monica, so maybe it wasn't as big
It
here.
didn't
right?
make it out here. But
Yeah.
Goud played harmonica for a while and went through an Alanis Morissette phase.
Oh yeah.
I love Alanis.
Yeah.
And he would do his answering machine with a long harmonica thing that we'd have to listen to leave a message.
The good old days.
You're like waiting. Okay.
We were really like, oh my
harmonica,
God, not the harmonica again. I just want to leave a message. That was his Alanis Morissette phase. And then Goud also, fun fact is he would play coffee houses and sing songs at coffee houses.
Oh, no
I'd
way.
sometimes
Sorry.
do backup.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. This is great epic Goud like info right here. I had no idea.
He
So
had
we're
a
gonna have
whole
to
other
swap
life here in
stories.
Illinois.
That's awesome.
I was in his first protest too. He made me get up at 5 a.m. to protest the tollway system when he realized it was a scam.
Wow.
And his
nice.
slogan was, what was it, like, use Necco candy? Because those Necco candies were the same as quarters.
We realized you could throw a Necco candy in there.
And it would register as a quarter.
Not the best. I'm not the best encouragement to do. But,
No, it was like 1997 or something. But that was like 19-year-old Goud or whatever, making me get up at 5 a.m. to stand by the tollway.
Nice.
We even got interviewed by the radio. Do you remember that? Like
What was that?
There was a radio station that came and interviewed us. It was really crazy.
I don't even remember that, Goud.
Yeah.
I probably just did. I was really tired and cold, so. And I really didn't care about the tollway system at the time, so I didn't realize how big of a scam it was. I was just tired.
See, I was ahead of my time, Brandy. Had you paid attention then, Illinois would be in better shape today.
Well, but don't forget, you had those years that you were a Hillary supporter. Remember that?
Everybody knows about that. I've talked about it pretty well.
Dark secret. I know. And then all of a sudden we
Not a
dropped
secret.
Hillary.
Not a secret.
Not a secret.
As I've made clear to people, I helped her during her first
You
campaign.
did.
By the time the second round came around, I knew that she was a big crook. So, you know, then I was like, throw that
Evil
woman in
little
jail.
troll in a
Yeah,
pantsuit.
That's okay. People change. You repented. That way to go, Goud. Just
It's proof that you can change. Like, I was, of course, more liberal as a younger person. I went to a super liberal arts college.
Yeah.
And then I grew up. I had to pay bills.
I know, it totally changes you.
yeah.
So, but thank you very much for all your information. Today's day one of high school, so I look forward to seeing if high school follows the same as grade school and junior high. And if it does, then I will start pursuing those avenues because and she didn't say anything for a while because she was told by the other kids you can't be racist against white people. So she thought it didn't count.
Wow. Yeah. That's, you know what? I think putting them on notice and letting them know that you're going to be involved. Now, you know, prepare your daughter too, because there may be some backlash. And this is something this is the main reason I find parents do not make complaints, is because they don't want their children to suffer because mom has got to be in her bonnet, right? And is, you know, her mama bear instincts are coming out and mom's going to raise a fuss, because that's going to mean maybe, okay, I have to change classes, or now I'm forced to do this. I feel like that is still, it is a penalizing, a discriminatory type of behavior. It's saying to the student that the behavior will continue and you will have to do your best to just simply avoid it. And so if that is the response you get, but just prepare your daughter. And this is where it's hard though, because even adults will crumple under this type of pressure or situation. But if she knows you have her back, and if you tell her kind of like what to expect and you prepare her, you know, I just think you've got a leg up for this world that this you know, that your daughter will be entering, and you're going to be able to, I think at that point, hopefully make it so that whatever they're doing to you that's making you uncomfortable makes them equally uncomfortable. I don't see why they get the right to just like make everybody uncomfortable and they don't have to feel any of that discomfort. So that is, you know, I think the act of being observed changes what's being observed. If you know you're under the spotlight, then you're going to adjust your actions accordingly. And so you can put them on notice and say, look, I've already been through this a bunch of times, and I do not want to see it again. You know, I am getting right on top of it, and you're going to hear from me every time it happens. Then I think you're letting them know that they need to at least do something in your case. They might not do it for every case, but in order to placate you and to pacify you and keep you quieter, they if they're smart, they will figure out and make life, you know, not crazy for your daughter. If they're not smart, if they're going to just ignore you, then you just get louder and you bring attention to it. And the thing that the schools hate more than anything else is negative press and negative publicity. Every politician will do whatever it takes to kind of avoid that. They really don't like it. They don't want to engage to that extent. But unfortunately, what it means is it means a lot of diligence and tenacity and I think just stubbornness on your part. And it's work. It's just work. I don't know. I can't, you know, say it's going to be so easy, because in order to it was more work for me to address all the problems in the schools with my kids than it was for me to just homeschool them. And
Yikes.
you know, yeah, I
don't want to homeschool nobody.
You know what? You are, I guarantee you are better equipped and more attuned to what your daughter needs than these people. At least you can guarantee that, you know, she's not going to be indoctrinated. And for me, that was the big selling point. I'm like, at least I'll know there's total transparency with what my kid is being taught.
See,
Because
you're talking to me on the wrong day, though. This is the first day of school, and we're happy that she has a place to go. Hit me up later in the year when I miss her a little bit more, but now I'm like, get on the bus.
Yeah.
I'll see you later.
I remember feeling, sort of like that at one time. I guess where it got to the point where I realized it just was not right was when, it was right around COVID and all my kids, I just saw what the toll it took on them.
My daughter I have an only child, so she was isolated. And we would watch every Friday, our Governor Pritzker would get on and tell us if we could go to school or not. And she would cry because 2 weeks became 3. Then it became, you're not coming back this year. Then the following year, she couldn't come back. She just cried. The reason we have a swing set in our backyard because she wasn't even allowed to go to the park by herself. They roped off the parks. So my mom bought her a swing set. And eventually, after several months, some of the kids were allowed to come over and play on our swing set, but not enter our house. And we at least were a place where kids could be outside a little. But she actually knows a little girl who wasn't allowed outdoors for like a year.
Oh, gosh.
Not even in the yard because they were afraid just breathing outside air would it was horrible. She was so miserable. That kid cried to go back to school.
Yeah. Well, that social interaction is important. But the sad thing is, they do get to school and then they cover up their faces. Yeah. They can't see, expressions. It's dehumanizing. And it is hugely detrimental to, I think, good communication, making connections. And so it still throws them back, In
my understanding, like I said from the beginning, I never thought masks worked. And apparently they don't really work. And they knew it the whole time, according to Fauci's own journal. So he just tortured kids for no reason, apparently.
Right.
But he liked being a star, I guess.
Yeah. I think he's sadistic and enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So.
Okay. Well,
but thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. Monica, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. That was really helpful.
I think you should end this show with the Monica and Brandy song, maybe at the end. Do you do rolling credits or something? You can do it too. Producer man, get on
that. Okay.
I agree with Brandy. I second that motion. So do it, Goud. Do it.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, guys. Brandy will have you back to give us an update too.
I will let you know maybe as we get further in the year how high school is turning out for us.
Okay.
That sounds great. Would love an update. Okay.
No problem. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thanks, Brandy.
All right.
Okay. Well, that was actually very helpful. So I am glad that they came on to talk about that because, like I said, I had no idea how to handle that situation since I don't have kids. And actually, when I think about it, if I had kids, I believe they would have been in the minority category since I am dark-skinned. So I don't know that I would deal with that. That wouldn't be an issue, I guess, if I had a kid that they'd have to deal with, except that I wouldn't want them to be being racist against white people or anybody. So, okay, we got a few comments. It looks like Alex says they're less than an hour in, and the show has, as usual, gone completely off the rails. Y'all should talk about protests against Goud when he was in college and wrote about Section 8 housing. We could talk about that sometime. Colin Breen says, Goud. Hello, Colin. Alex says, there are 2 people watching the show according to live viewers ticker. One of them is me, which means the other must be the Utah State Bureau of Investigation. There's more than 2 people watching, but the FBI may be watching. They have done that in the past. And the Marsgate says, thanks, ladies, to Monica and Brandy. Okay, so now let's switch. Next topic. I want to talk about immigration today. And kind of there's a few parts to this, but I think what you're going to see as we go through this is overall that what's happening is our government is helping employers suppress American wages. And so what I want people to understand is that immigration in all forms at this point is a negative, and it is being used to purposely suppress wages for Americans and make it so that you are not able to make it and keep a, even be middle class really anymore. They're trying to destroy all of that. Let's start with this, because I thought that this video I saw was actually really informative. So let me play this for you. It's from a news show. And Mr. Producer says that if we play the music, we'll get a strike. So I was correct.
Hours at night.
Politics. Santiago?
Hi, good evening. I'm a waiter at a local restaurant in Queens, a full-time college student who sleeps an average of 4 hours at night and is still thousands in debt. How is a war in a country half the world away, funded by the taxes pulled from my check, helping me in any way?
Yeah, it's look, it's a valid and it's a tough question. I know for certain, and if we just look at the things the president has put in place in terms of housing and big corporations that are buying up whole neighborhoods, the tax cuts that he extended with the big beautiful bill, the energy policies that we're putting in place to not only make us self-sufficient, but to lessen these dependencies and lower prices, even lowering prescription drug prices. The president's absolutely focused on
Politics. Santiago?
Hi, good evening.
Okay. So I just want to say that guy has no idea. First of all, the student, legit question. Great question. The guy answering, his name is, he's the UN ambassador, Mike Waltz. I don't know who, he's not talking to that college student at all. Prescription drugs, you're talking about the cost of prescription drugs to what looks like a very healthy college student. I don't think he's taking any prescription drugs. I doubt he cares about the cost of prescription drugs. The other thing he mentioned are tax cuts. You didn't provide new tax cuts for the most part in the big beautiful bill. It was a continuation of tax cuts that were already in place in the first Trump administration. So extending the current tax cuts is not giving people a new tax cut. And I'm getting, and it's annoying when people talk about this as if they gave new tax cuts. You extended the tax cuts. Okay, whatever. Energy policy. How does that impact him? Let's say if he has to drive places, and I don't know that he does because he said he's in New York, but he's going to be paying, let's say in New York, I would guess $5 a gallon for gas. So your energy policy is actually not helping him at all. And then the other thing was housing. We passed this housing bill that will make it harder for big companies to go and buy single family homes. But actually, if you understand that housing bill, it's socialism. It's putting the federal government even more into the housing market, which is the problem to begin with. The reason why housing prices are elevated, even the demand has fallen, is because the federal government is propping up prices. That's all they're doing. They haven't addressed the issues that a college student would have. Somebody that's coming out of college with massive debt because our student loan program is actually very poorly designed. It doesn't make any sense. All it does is it drives up the cost of college because colleges raised all their rates to soak up the full amount of the loans. And then it saddles these students with loans that I think if I'm correct on this, that their interest rate is set at 7%, which is really high. When I graduated from law school in 2003, I didn't have any debt from undergrad because I had a scholarship. But when I went to law school, I had to take out loans. And this was before they did reforms under Bush. I think they did the reforms in like 2006. So in 2003, interest rates were really low. We were allowed to consolidate. And so me and all of my friends, everybody knew this, they consolidated for 30 years. So I still pay a student loan payment. But the interest rate on the student loans is like less than 3%. So it's actually not worth paying off early, right? Because the idea would be you could either take that money and invest in the stock market and make more, or you could buy a house. You could do other things with it that's more worth it. I remember at the time that we consolidated, one of my friends said, everyone should just consolidate. It's like a $300 payment or less. And by the time that we pay them off, so it'll be a few more years, by the time we pay them off, it'll basically be, that's how much it'll cost to buy a meal at McDonald's. At the time, I thought he was crazy, but now saying how much McDonald's costs, I'm like, man, that keep is really he saw the future much better than I did. But the point being is like, you haven't addressed the students' concerns, right? And I think at the bottom line is everything is so expensive. This somebody that is just coming out of college really comes out at a massive disadvantage. They're not going to be making the salaries needed to be able to afford the basics of life: housing, a car, food, entertainment. And yes, you should be able to go and get entertainment. I hear these influencers are always acting like, oh, you want to eat out? Oh, you're so irresponsible. Like, yeah, I think someone who is middle class in America should be able to eat a meal out. I actually don't think, I think it's weird that you can't, that it's so unaffordable that you can't do that. And if we can't address the issues of students like this, and when I mean we, I mean Republicans, we will get wiped out, completely wiped out by this generation, and rightfully so. And the way to address this is first, you do have to address the cost issue. That's all being driven, the inflation and the constant, these prices going up like crazy, through two things, which is the federal government and governments in general getting involved in everything and driving the cost up, but also money printing, right? So the federal government is going to run like a $2 trillion deficit this year. They're printing money that causes inflation. The second piece, though, is you need salaries to go up. And what we are seeing is that the federal government on every single level is undermining the ability of Americans to get higher wages. It's offensive. I think that the people that, and I'll just be honest, the people that go and they hire these illegals and stuff, that's just part of it. And the temporary workers, I think they're traitors. I think they hate Americans. And they'll give you all these lines like, oh, I'm a businessman, I gotta save money. Well, you're getting all the benefits of America without any of the burdens. To the extent that hiring an American is a burden, I don't think it's a burden. I actually think it's your obligation. And so now I'm going to show you some of how this works. Marsgate says, and that's with a degree, everyone else is sucking it harder. Yeah, exactly. I think, the thing is, if you look at the different levels of employment, the federal government undermines people's ability to get higher wages in different ways. So when it comes to working class jobs that don't require a college degree, they do it with illegal aliens. So that's what you see in our construction industry, flooded with illegals. And we'll talk about that in a minute. In the professional realm, so this is with people with college degrees, they're competing against H-1Bs and OPTs. So, I've talked about this before with student visas. They come here from other countries on the student visa. When they graduate, they convert to an OPT, optional practical training program. This is a executive branch creative program that could be canceled tomorrow. Trump's not doing it. I just want to mention that. Employers don't pay payroll taxes for people that they hire on the OPT program. So they save 15% off the top compared to an American worker. So this is unfair competition to their fellow cohorts that are Americans. Then they go into the professional world, and these companies are importing H-1Bs constantly. When you look at teenagers, if you look around, you go to different places, you don't see teenagers working as much anymore. When I was a kid, I worked. Like as a teenager, during the summer, during the school year, we'd get jobs. We wanted a little bit of cash to be able to do some things, whatever. I mean, go to a movie. I guess I don't remember if I bought a car or not. I think my parents gave me like a very old car, which is the right way to do it. I'm not complaining. And things like that, right? Like to put gas in the car, to be able to go out with your friends and do whatever teenagers do. You don't see that anymore. And it turns out that even those jobs are being taken by visa holders. They're letting people import camp counselors, ski resort people. Every single job that an American would do is now being filled by foreigners instead. And I think the real issue here is if the Republican Party doesn't want to address it because they want to satisfy their big donors, they will get wiped out. Okay, because the alternative to this is going to be socialism. Real socialism. Republicans are socialist anyway, but bad socialism. To the extent what the Republicans push isn't bad, but Okay, so here let's start with construction industry. So, you know, I think if you look around in Utah, if you have ever used construction companies at all, they are dominated by illegal alien labor. And the way that this actually works is that you'll have kind of these main contractors. They will be Americans. But then what they do is they subcontract a lot of the work out, and the subcontractors use illegal labor. And what this is a way for the people who are the Americans running the main contractor, for them to kind of slough off or also subcontract their liability for hiring illegal aliens. So they're getting all the benefits of the cheap labor, violating the law, and they know this is happening. They 100% know this is happening. Marsgate says socialism on speed dial, maybe. Yeah, so maybe that's the difference. Republicans fully support socialism, elected ones, and Democrats will just put it on speed dial. They're just a little bit. And the thing is like, look, if you are unable to make it so that Americans can go out, achieve the American dream, because you're undermining their ability to do that, then they're going to go for alternatives. Because I think people are desperate to be able to live a better life. And I think it's fair. You either address their needs or you lose. And I think the Republican Party is heading towards big losses because they're not addressing people's needs. Now, a lot of, in Utah, and actually in a lot of states, the state legislatures are dominated by developers. And then also a lot of the parties are dominated by developers. And so we see that in Utah. It's why we have a lot of the rules that we have. If you noticed, you could go out to rural Utah, to a small town. Just pick one, Delta. When you drive down 15 and you start to go south, get into like southern Utah County, like Payson, go south of there. And then what you see is, which I think is weird, suddenly you'll see townhouses everywhere. And you're like, what? Who needs a townhouse in like West Mountain, or these like very small towns that ought to really have homes with yards, right? It doesn't make sense that you have townhomes. Well, that's because our legislature passes laws that the developers want to be able to encourage this type of growth. And this type of growth, if you understand how it works, when you densify areas, they tend to vote more blue. So Democrats tend to be very supportive of this. They understand what happens in those types of neighborhoods, and it's a function. And I don't mean this. This is an observation. It's a function of how those neighborhoods work. I've lived in high density areas, and now I live in a low density area. So where I live, it's in Riverton. It's all quarter acre lots, single family homes. Everybody knows everybody. So when someone walks in the neighborhood and you've never seen them before, people notice because they know everybody. And I mean, I most of my neighbors I know. I may not know everybody's names because I kind of forget sometimes, but it is a very community type place. For a while, actually, there was a time when my dogs weren't here, so I wasn't walking every day. And one of my neighbors actually told another neighbor that he was worried about me because he hadn't seen me in a long time, and to check if I was okay. And they actually came to my house to check on me. So like that should give you a sense, like that's what a low density neighborhood tends to be like. Living in high density neighborhoods, a lot of times people don't know each other. And it's just a function of there's more people, you're more crowded, and the patterns won't line up as well. It's just harder to be able to keep track of that many people. Those areas tend to vote more blue. And that's just how it works. So developers, these Republican developers, they want this high density housing because it makes them bigger profits. That's just the reality of it. They don't care about the long-term ramifications of turning red areas blue, which is what they're doing, and destroying kind of that rural American way of life, which is what it does. Okay. There's also other issues. You have higher crime in high density neighborhoods also, again, because people don't know each other. It just creates a different dynamic. So in Utah, we do have this developer thing. Now, one of a wife of a developer, Alexis Ence, has been really trying to be prominent, I think, in the Republican Party. And so she used to be on the state central committee. I think she lost her re-election to it. But now she's part of this Utah Election Integrity Network, which is totally fake. The one thing, they have all these suggestions, but none of the people in the committee know anything about elections. And they've had no involvement with making any changes to elections. And they don't want to look at any elections, multiple, that have been stolen in Utah. It's a totally fake group, but she is part of that. Well, so I asked over the weekend, I just asked her some basic questions. And in the answers that she gave, to her credit, I think she gave the game away. So let me just first show you who she is. So, I mean, if you've heard Alexis Ence, you know, she's actually very pleasant in person. I like her as a person. It's not, but her husband is part of this Ence Homes, right? And actually, it looks like they build very nice homes. They're very pretty, and they're a home builder down in southern Utah. And let's see here. So I asked her. Let me just hold on. Give me 1 second. Let me pull up the question, and then this will make sense. Okay, here. So I'll show you how this went. So I had asked her a question. I had said that, and we'll play this video in a minute, but I had said that we know that construction in Utah is relying on illegal labor. And so what I do not want people in prominent positions in the Republican Party who are using illegal labor or benefiting from it. And so I said, this is also why we can't have people like Alexis Ence speaking for the Utah Republican Party unless she can guarantee her husband's construction company does not have any illegals working on the development projects. Okay, so her response was, my husband is a general contractor. So they're the ones that I think get to pull the permits, you know, create the development, and then they hire the subcontractors to be able to build the homes. She says, my husband is a general contractor. That's the only true part of any of this. We have hired 0 illegals. I'm screenshotting every one of these slanderous posts. It was, by the way, there was nothing slanderous. People were asking questions about, does your husband hire illegal aliens? Legit questions, okay? Then I said, you want to be in politics, but you won't let people ask you questions about your husband's business. This is a good first answer, but people have raised some solid questions about the subcontractors you guys use. I think what we are all trying to understand is whether illegals are working on your projects either directly for your husband's company. Now, she says no, so I don't have a reason to question that. Or, or a subcontractor hired by his company. The reality is that people who run construction companies in Utah use lots of contractors and subcontractors with illegal labor. That's just as bad as when the contractor does it. And I don't want people in high positions in the GOP or state government who are using illegal labor either directly or through subs. Okay. So then her response, this tells you everything. She says, notice how quickly does your husband employ illegal immigrants becomes what about his subs? They're subs, they're sub-subs. That's not an argument. It's moving the goalposts until you reach a question nobody could possibly answer. And I'm not running for office. I'm not running for anything. I'm just a private citizen working to promote conservative values because I believe they best protect our freedoms. Okay. Her husband is a general contractor. He's hiring these subcontractors. Their contracts could include provisions saying, as a subcontractor, you must use E-Verify for all individuals who work on our projects. That's how you would try to guarantee that there's no illegal labor being used. She's not going to do that. And this, to me, when I read this, was basically saying, we're not checking with what the subcontractors are doing, which means likely that there are illegals working on the projects. So this is how the construction industry in Utah works. they're trying to not just, like subcontract the work, but subcontract the liability of having illegal labor. Every job that is taken by an illegal on these projects is one that should have actually gone to an American at a higher market wage. So to me, this was disqualifying for Alexis to really be a prominent voice in the Republican Party. If someone like this is a prominent voice in the Republican Party, then we have major problems, because Trump ran on mass deportations. People like Alexis are going to undermine that. And I'll just add, she's a heavy supporter of Celeste Malloy, who is pro-amnesty and importing more cheap labor for businesses and her donors. So this is all part and parcel of that. This is exactly the problem with the party. And I did mention here that, we're trying to, again, what do the contracts say? Are you guys limiting this? I'll just say, like I had this happen by my house, the Jordan Basin Improvement District. I think that's what they're calling themselves now. They had a big project by my house, and they had, I take my dogs for walks, and I'd be walking by it, and whenever one of the workers were throwing chicken bones all over the sidewalk, and so my little dog would find them, and I'd have to pull it out of her mouth. But she loves a chicken bone. And then, but also what I would notice is that the workers were all speaking Spanish, and they were clearly, it was a foreign, to me, it looked like a bunch of illegal aliens. People will say, how can you tell, Goud? Well, I can tell if someone has recently immigrated here. It's usually pretty obvious. And if they're not speaking English at all, that's usually, to me, a pretty good sign that they're probably not legal immigrants, especially if they're working at something like construction. So the vibe was illegal to me. I complained to the Jordan Basin Improvement District saying, hey, look, I think that your contractor is using illegal labor on the project. And I could not get them to go, and they said they had an inspector on site. I couldn't get them to go and actually do an inspection. And let me add, they weren't even following the rules. I went out multiple times and I measured the width of the cones that they had put out, because the cones, I think, have to be 11.5 feet is the minimum width of a lane they can create with cones. And they were narrower all the time because the workers weren't actually following the rules. I also think that's a sign of not being an American worker. So I'm complaining about the basics. Plus, I say, I don't think these workers are Americans. I don't think they're here legally. The person responds and says, our contract requires that they use E-Verify. I'm like, okay, but you need to go and do an audit, and you need to do the E-Verify yourself, or find a way to check if they have illegal workers. They wouldn't do it. They just said, oh, we emailed the employer and the contractor, and they said that they used E-Verify. That's it. And I think it's on purpose, because they know that the subcontractor is using illegal aliens. And then Marsgate says there's money laundering and job laundering. I think same business model, probably. Okay, so what this does when you allow construction companies to use illegal labor is it depresses wages for Americans. And then you get stuff like this video. And this video is actually pretty offensive when you listen to what some of these guys say. So let me play this for you.
White people doing the roofs. I'm white. I don't want. I'm white.
Look
I'm
how
white.
long
I'm
the
white.
grass is
I'm white. I don't want white people doing the roofs, because I got people complaining it's hot outside.
So why don't you educate me?
Okay, so that's exactly the point. First of all, he's very well dressed. He looks like he probably works out a lot. He's making bank as the contractor and then going and hiring illegals. He'll admit it. These guys admit that that's what they do. So understand that he's basically not paying market wages, and he is personally benefiting from not doing so. He gets to live a luxurious lifestyle without following the rules that are supposed to apply to all businesses in the US. He's a traitor. That's the bottom line. But also, what he dives into is exactly the issue. Another reason why employers don't like Americans is because they may be demanding about issues. Yeah, maybe they say it's hot outside. Okay, then you as an employer have to compensate for that. And maybe it is that, yeah, you know what? It's summer in Utah, it's hot outside, but you're probably gonna have to pay higher wages for people that are willing to go and be in the heat all day and deal with that. That's the reality of your business. You have to, we should have these businesses paying market rates for wages. We should stop with the federal government allowing them, in this case, to use illegals instead of paying the market wages. That's the answer. But again, or maybe, like in a construction site, maybe you have to put up fans that blow water on people to cool them off. I don't know what the solution is, but I know that it's not what I consider his comment to be racist, because he's saying white Americans, but he means all Americans, because he just doesn't want employees that complain about working conditions.
I'm white. I don't want white people doing the roofs because I got people complaining it's hot outside.
So why don't you educate me of what mass deportations would do to your industry?
There'd be no one to work on to build back. We've already seen it in Florida.
So then allow me.
That's a lie. What he actually means is nobody would work for the low wages that I'm paying. I'd have to raise my wages, and then I wouldn't be able to have, if you look at his clothes, like nice
provocatively
clothes and
then
stuff like that.
have me tell you how I hear it. Are you telling me everyone in this room is hiring illegal labor?
Not everyone, but I know I have in the past.
Okay, so everyone is saying yes. So, and again, you guys can boo me off stage, and I want to respectfully have it. And if I'm wrong, come to the mic. So is everyone here in this room committing a felony?
Yes.
Okay, good to know. You have proven a very
They should be prosecuted.
a depressing point that we are not a nation that wants to have immigration policy. We just aren't. We're not. Like, we are not tough enough.
I think he's wrong on this point, because again, Trump won on mass deportations. People want real immigration reform, meaning mass deportations. I think generally Americans want less immigrants in the country. They want the H-1B program gone. They want the student visa program, I would say, eliminated. Maybe the people want it reduced, but definitely not something where you get to stay forever. So colleges are now immigration mills. They want the J-1 visas canceled. All of this stuff, people want it gone. The problem is that normal people don't have a say in this. It's driven by moneyed interests that go and buy themselves special favors to run their shitty businesses that don't follow the same rules that everybody else has to follow. And that's what it's about. It's run by people that hate our country and hate our people. That's what those guys represent. Let's see if I can get this
Strong enough to have mass deportations. We're just not. And I thought that we were, maybe, but maybe we could have a couple months of it. And look, as far as the compassion thing, I look at it, why is it not compassion to send them back to their country of origin? Why do they have a right to come to our nation? A nation has a right to be able to invite, be able to reject people of their choosing. And as far as the Christian standpoint of it, in Deuteronomy, in Ezekiel, all throughout the scriptures, there's plenty of examples of repelling people from coming to your nation and prioritizing them in your homeland.
Okay. So you can see what they try to do is they try to make it a race issue. These business owners insult Americans a lot, and look at those. You think, no offense, they're not like that. Those roofers, they're not getting on a roof and do anything. They're selling the roof, the service, and then going to the gym. They get $100,000 car. They have a nice boat. They have a beautiful home, while they use illegal labor to actually go and do the roofing. And that's a problem. And at the end of the day, this is probably going to lead to some sort of a revolution where you're going to have people who you can see the rumblings are beginning. It's starting in California with a wealth tax. I suspect that'll spread across the country. And I think it's going to be people that are really unhappy with the system that is set up by people like these roofers, construction companies, and the entire agricultural sector, the tech companies, all of these guys that want to go on importing all this labor to suppress American wages, they're at the end of the day, my suspicion is you are going to have a revolution where people are going to want a wealth tax and they're going to seize your assets. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of feel like if that happens, you deserved it. Because you screwed these people over and you screwed them out of a right to be able to make a living in their own country. I mean, when you think about it, the way I think about it is this, like when I turned 18, and every man in America, when you turn 18, you have to go and you have to register for the Selective Service. There's always a possibility that you could be pulled up in a draft, right? And by the way, then you've got a few million Americans in the military generally who are constantly being sent to wars because we can't stop fighting wars no matter who we elect. We can't stop it. And so then you tell those same people that we need to import people to do the jobs because they won't do them. And I guess like for me, it's like, so now let's say I get a college education. I do all the right things. We have all these American kids. They do the right things. They go to high school, they graduate, they do a good job. They get into a good college. They sign up for the Selective Service, and then they try to get a job, and they're competing against foreigners who have no chance of being drafted. They have no loyalty to our country. They just came here to make money. And by the way, our federal government through the OPT program lets them get a financial advantage over Americans. And then you're gonna, and what do you expect the end result of that is? And then when you keep getting higher, you get replaced by H-1Bs legally. That's the system that's set up. Your kids can't get jobs because all the jobs are taken by foreigners. Where does that lead? Where do you think that leads? For Alexis Ence and her husband, where do you guys think this leads? If you're using subcontractors and you're not making them guarantee that they're not using Americans, what do you think ends up happening at the end of this? I think people need to think about it. It's like, where do you guys think all of this ends up? I don't think it ends up in a good place. Mr. Producer said illegal labor at lower cost is a form of slavery. Correct. It is slavery. Heber by the airport has been filled with dense housing. There are apartments being built at both the north and south ends of town. You know, I've actually driven through Heber and seen that, like all this dense housing. It's just weird looking. It doesn't make any sense, but it makes people more money. That's all some people care about is just money. Okay, so that's the construction industry. And so that's where illegal labor is being used. Now, I will note that there is an effort to, and I know I have it here somewhere, to actually create an H-1B visa program to bring in people to fill jobs that don't require a college degree. It's called the H-2C program. Let me see, I have this somewhere here. Give me one sec. I can't find it. Okay, give me one. I know that I posted about this before. So H2C. And I just checked on this today. And I will say that Mike Kennedy is a co-sponsor of this bill. And it turns out that he is still co-sponsoring this bill. And so I cannot vote for him if he is co-sponsoring a bill to create a new visa, a temporary worker program to bring in workers to fill working class jobs. Here we go. Okay, let me pull this up. Let's see. Here. Okay. So this is the program. It's the H2C program, and what this did, it would allow the importation of large numbers of foreign construction workers, servers, and hotel maids. One of the co-sponsors is Mike Kennedy. I just checked today because I was told he's going to pull his name off the bill. He has not done so yet. And as I have made clear on this show, I will not support people who support amnesty. I will not vote for them. Amnesty or any sort of programs that will that will allow the importation of cheap foreign labor to replace Americans. So Mike Kennedy, I will not vote for you until you remove your name from this bill. And I need a promise you're not going to try to pull this when you win. I do want to make clear also, though, that all the local candidates, county candidates and down, you have my vote. Like I give more leeway to our county candidates because I've run for that. I understand how difficult that is. We're in a Democrat county, although I do think we have 3 very conservative county-wide candidates that are very good. So I don't really have any qualms about voting for them. But I don't want people to think I'm just sending in a blank ballot. I will be voting for some of the candidates on the ballot. Mike Kennedy is trying to be the rep for my district. He will not have my vote as long as his name shows up on this bill. So, but this should show you they're trying to now. So construction is generally dominated by all these illegal aliens. They're trying to now make it so they can use legal imported labor and then just completely destroy the industry for Americans. Now, also what happens, and this is kind of the untold part, is let's say, like I told you, I saw this whole team. They were doing I can't remember exactly what they were doing, but it was all Spanish speaking. So of course, even if you paid a market wage, an American wouldn't want to go and work on that team, right? Like, I'm not looking to go and work where I have to speak Spanish, which I don't speak, but even if I did, like, why would I want to speak Spanish living in America all day long? This is my country. I speak English. We all speak English. It's our national language. And so that's a problem. And actually it should be seen as discriminatory because that's not the type of place an American is going to want to work. And it is set up to exclude Americans on a cultural basis as well. Okay. So anyway, I just see this as a real problem. Okay. So then I talked about the teenager thing. So let me play this clip. This is about the J1 visas, this one's wild too. And then after this one, we'll talk about goat herders because I thought that was
2025. So every year we admit more than 275,000 people. That was the last number in 2025. 275,000 people in 1 year on these J1 exchange visas. That's not counting any family they bring with them. About 100,000 of them were working these summer jobs. Another 32,000 were working as camp counselors. There's more than 10,000 au pairs working as nannies every year. And this category has 3 times the overstay rate of any other category of temporary visa. So that's a significant risk as well, contributing to illegal immigration. So these are jobs that there are Americans who would like to do. And the State Department has the authority to simply get rid of these categories. The law says we want scholarly, academic, government exchanges, not babysitters, lifeguards, and ice cream scoopers. They have the authority to just get rid of the visa program, open up these jobs for Americans. The other thing we need to do is hold these third-party staffing company sponsors responsible for the behavior of the people who are involved in this program. In other words, tell them you're going to face penalties if you have overstays, if you have employers who are abusing the workers, as the New York Times of all people documented in great detail recently how these workers were being mistreated and abused in a lot of these work sites. If they ride hard on those sponsors who are making money off this program, then we can start to have some discipline if they actually did some oversight on it. But there's no reason the State Department should be running a nanny placement service or a lifeguard placement service. Just get rid of them completely. And this will open up great opportunities. If these staffing companies want to recruit people, they should be casting down their bucket where they are and working hard to find American teenagers to take these jobs, not people coming from China, Mexico, and Jamaica.
No, 32,000 camps counselors, 10,000 babysitters or au pairs, or whatever you want to call them, nannies, 100,000 others.
Okay.
So
it's just wild, right? Why are we importing people to be camp counselors or au pairs, or any summer job? I just, this is supposed to be for cultural exchange, but I'll just be honest with you. We should get rid of the program if we want Americans to. I don't need, we have people from every single country that have immigrated here. I don't need more cultural exchange in the U.S. I think we're good. If we want to have cultural exchange, why wouldn't we just send Americans overseas to go and work in other countries for the summer, and then let them go and learn about a foreign culture, right? Because the reality is, we have the best culture in the world. Everybody wants to be here. They don't want to go and be in these other countries. So why not send Americans to go do the culture exchange, and they can come back, and then we don't have the immigration issue here. I just think it's crazy. Again, another example of the federal government undermining opportunities for Americans. And at this point, it's young Americans. So think about when you were a teenager and the jobs you had. I had multiple jobs when I was a teenager. I don't think I could get those jobs today. Obviously I'm going to be 49 in a few days, but I don't mean it that way. But when I was a teenager, if I was a teenager today, I don't know what opportunities are actually available for teenagers. Why would you bring lifeguards from overseas? I have lots of friends that were lifeguards during the summer. Camp counselors. I had friends that were camp counselors during the summer. Friends that used to babysit. I don't understand why we're importing people to do these jobs instead of having people pay Americans market wages to do these jobs for them. And if you can't afford the market wage, then you don't get to hire the person. It's not, the answer isn't, okay, you should be able to import somebody until the labor is cheap enough for you to afford it. Okay, so that's the J1 program. Mr. Producer says other cultures wouldn't let us in. And that's probably true too. I mean, if you think about how other countries treat Americans, it's not good generally. And they do see us as they get to come and like an ATM machine. They get to come and take advantage of us on every level, and then we can't go and have the cultural exchange or whatever you want to call it. And Mr. Producer says no high school kid or teenager would be allowed into another country to take a job. I think that's also unfortunately true. We're the only people that are suckers for this type of stuff. Okay, so that's the J1. Now this I thought was really fascinating. So I was in San Diego this week because my family lives there. And there was this article about goat herders and sheep herders. And, we've had this discussion because of the whole, the sheep herding industry in Utah came after me or whatever. Because I said that they use foreign slave labor for their operations, which they do. But this article, I'll give you a little background first, right? So we have Carson Jorgensen. He was the previous chair of the Utah Republican Party, and he runs a sheep herding operation, or sheep farm, I guess is what maybe you call it, or sheep ranch. I don't know, whatever you call it. He has sheep, and this is his family's business. So I think they pass it down generation to generation. So it's not like he earned money and went and bought a business. It's something he got from his family, and I don't have an issue with that, except when the people who do this then don't. What it indicates to me, though, is that he's actually not a good businessman because he's incapable of running it if he has to use American labor. Okay, so what we learned from Carson is that in Utah, sheep herders only pay $2,001, or sheep farmers only pay their herders $2,132.41 a month. The way sheep herding works is you actually have to go out with the sheep into the mountains and you stay with them for extended periods of time. You live in a trailer or a tent while you're out there, and you're basically on call 24/7 with them. The farmer will provide you with food, but they'll drop it off to you once a week. And Yeah, so you're basically, I assume it's very isolating to be out in the wilderness by yourself, right? Unless you're weird, you probably, it takes a lot to be able to do that. I respect people that can do that. Now, if you're on call 24/7, you're basically making the equivalent of $3 an hour at that rate. Now, according to the way the federal government runs this program, it's the H-2A program. If Carson can't find an American who will take a rate, the rate will be very low as well. It might be a little bit higher than this foreign H-2A rate, but it'll be lower than a job you could just get at McDonald's. He gets to import a foreigner for the H-2A visa. And by the way, this is if you can even find his job postings. I don't know where he posts them. I've asked him to send me one multiple times, and he will never send it because I suspect that he probably posts it in some random newspaper somewhere that nobody reads. It's not on Indeed or somewhere where you could easily find it. And let me just add that the actual solution to all of these problems I'm pointing out is just to stop importing workers. So end these worker visa programs. I would say end all immigration. I'm kind of exhausted of this at this point, but end all the temporary visa programs. And then tell employers, if you need workers, you have to pay the market rate. So when someone like Carson says, oh, I can't, what is the market rate? The answer to that is, I don't know. I don't know what the market rate is, but you need to keep increasing your wages until an American wants to actually do the job. That's the answer. And that's for you to figure out what the market rate is in the part of Utah that you're in. So let's say that you're sheep herding in Salt Lake County. I'm guessing the wage will be higher than if you're doing it in a rural county, because obviously cost of living is higher. There's just more to it, right? That's the reality of how this works. But the government needs to not be involved in trying to help these businesses keep their wages down. That's not their job. That's not even helpful to your voters who actually want higher wages. Okay, so in California, they actually passed a bill that was about wages in California. And what's really interesting about this is that they had, I'll read a little bit of this to you because it's a study about the wage increases that happen for sheep herders and goat herders. So, in Utah, Carson only has to pay $2,132.41 a month. But in California, he'd actually have to pay more because the state of California came in and was like, this isn't enough. Now, I'll just add, they still don't have the wages high enough for what that job is. So we'll read a little bit about this, but it says California's Assembly Bill 1066 overtime for farm workers law increased minimum sheep and goat range herder wages by 250% in 6 years, from less than $2,000 a month in 2018 to almost $5,000 in 2025. However, higher wages did not attract domestic U.S. workers to herding. Most herders in the United States are workers from Peru and Mexico who have H-2A visas. What this tells you, though, the reason it didn't attract more American workers is because the wage is still not high enough. $60,000 to, again, go and live in the wilderness for months on end, not in a luxury situation, is not going to attract people. You have to pay more. There are other things you could do that pay more than that if you're going to, if you want that type of a lifestyle. So then it says, hold on. And then it says, understanding how employers in the industry have adapted to rapidly rising labor costs may hold lessons for other agricultural sectors that face rising wages due to legislative changes, immigration enforcement, union activity, or other factors. Federal labor regulations and California labor laws define range herders as workers who are on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 24/7, or for 168 hours a week. Our interviews with herders indicate that they typically work 7 to 8 hours each day, but they are required to live on site near their herds and to be on call or available in the event of a sick animal, predator, or other incident. So this is my point. whatever the actual working hours are, you're on 24/7 and you're living with them. So it's not like you go home at night to your family. You're actually out in the field. So if standard California labor laws were applied to on-call herders paid the state's minimum wage, range herders would have to be paid about $20,000 a month. Okay. If you paid people $240,000 a year to be a herder, you would have no problems finding people. Zero. Now, I don't know that the market wage actually needs to be $20,000 a month, right? I don't know. We don't know what the market rate is because, again, right now it's being suppressed by allowing these herders to import foreign labor. But I'm not sure $20,000 is what you need. You probably maybe you need $100,000 or $150,000. I think but that's for the herders to figure, or the sheep farmers to figure out, without the government providing the cheap foreign labor. So range herders were exempt from California labor laws that required overtime wages for farm workers after 10 hours a day or 60 hours a week. So like everybody else is 40 hours if you're an hourly worker, and then you go into overtime. For farmers, we're like 60 hours. Like, does that even make sense? And then Assembly Bill 1066 was enacted in 2016 to phase in at 40 hours and then overtime. Okay, so they were trying to change the law. The California Labor Code authorizing the alternative minimum monthly range herder wage specified only sheep herders, which meant that range goat herders had to be paid $20,000 a month minimum wage. Ranchers complained, and the California legislature enacted SB 143 to pay range goat herders at the same rate as sheep herders alternative minimum wage until July 1st, 2026. If the legislature does not act, range goat herder wages will rise to about $20,000 a month beginning on July 1st, 2026. So this is why this came up. When I was in California, there was an article talking about how some of these sheep farmers were hedging that the California legislature was not going to come back and change the law for them, so their wages would go up. And then if that happened, they had this hedging contract to be able to deal with the increase in wage that was going to happen. So anyway, I thought this was fascinating. Let me get to here's a couple things I want you to. So this talks about the working conditions for these range herders. So this is both sheep and goat herders. Range herders stay with their herds, living in mobile trailers that include toilets and showers, stoves and refrigerators, and sleeping facilities. Herders are on call 24/7, which means under California law that herders must be paid for 168 hours a week. Our interviews found that most work unlike personal attendants who live with the clients they care for, range herders do not have designated off-duty time and normally cannot leave their workplaces. So you can understand, right? If that's the situation, you do have to pay people for their time. These farmers that are arguing that I shouldn't have to pay them, okay, then I mean, I guess you can argue that, but then really, you should probably have kids and have your kids do it. Because if you're going to have other people do it, you have to pay them for their time. All right, this I thought was interesting. Okay, so in the interviews they did, California ranchers reported that their range herders are very satisfied with wages and working conditions. So the employers are saying, oh, my workers are totally satisfied. Consultations with advocates, by contrast, featured assertions that ranchers often violate labor laws and H-2A regulations, but herders are afraid to complain for fear of being fired or blacklisted. It is very hard to evaluate these competing claims. So as you can see, right, part of what's going on here is that the ranchers have leverage over the workers on visas. If you have American workers and you mistreat them, they can quit or they can file a complaint, and they will do that. That's what makes American workers different. These foreigners won't do it. And so now you've got basically the equivalent of slave labor. That's why they like them. Now let's get to the part where, so I thought this was interesting. They talk about Australia. Okay, so they said, they talk about how Australia does its how its lamb industry operates, right? And sheep's or lambs are baby sheep. So there are other possible adaptations to higher herder wages. Australia, the largest exporter of lamb and goat meat, has a far less labor-intensive sheep and goat industry. One worker manages 3,000 to 5,000 sheep with the help of dogs and drones that monitor and move animals to fresh forage within large fenced paddocks in areas with fewer predators than in the United States. Australian ranchers use less labor because of their infrastructure and because they do not help use with births, the female sheep. USDA reports that Australian leg of lamb was imported to the United States in 2025 for $6 a pound, half the price that US ranchers say they need to cover their costs. So there's efficiency that could be had in order to deal with higher labor costs. So when these farmers come out and they're constantly complaining about the cost of labor going up, what they need to be doing is looking for new efficiencies and new ways to do things. Because the answer is, again, I do not think the answer is, hey, here's all this cheap labor, this foreign slave labor you can import. The actual answer is say, you need to find a better way to do your business within the bounds of the law that allows you to be more efficient with the labor you have. Because also, if you pay someone more, you can expect more out of them. And I think you actually get better labor when you pay more. So they say, they talk about how the ranchers are responding to the pay increases, because California's wage did go up to $5,000 a month from the $2,000 initially, right? And so it said they increased their herd sizes. And then some ranchers, there's consolidation going on in the industry. They increase their herd sizes, and some are also finding ways to switch their herders to hourly wages, which means they can go home at night. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then they're also finding new revenue streams. So, and we already talked about how it wasn't attracting more American workers, but I think that's, again, they're still not paying enough. I don't think $5,000 a month is enough to get most people to go live with sheep for months on end. Okay. Well, okay, so that was kind of let me stop sharing for a minute. Okay. So I thought that was really interesting. Like I said, we don't know what the market wages are for these jobs right now, because the federal government is allowing employers to constantly import temporary workers that are paid less than Americans would make. And these employers like it because they're compliant. Like I just showed you, they won't file complaints, and it means that the employers can abuse them. And they are tied to the employer. So their visa is contingent on staying with that employer. So they're going to be terrified of getting fired from the job. That's two. And then they make less money. And the employer's like, oh, great, I have more profits. and a lot of these employers are very selfish. They don't care about how they're impacting America, how they're impacting our culture by bringing in foreigners, and how they're stealing opportunities from Americans who, again, if you're born here, you have a birthright to be able to expect that you can go out, do the right things, and you can make a living, right? I mean, that's how it works, because you also are expected to give up your life for your country if something happens. If you break that bond and make it, oh yeah, you have to give up your life if something happens, but you can't make a living, I don't think that country works. I'll just add too, like, a lot of these employers are always like, free markets, we believe in the free markets. So, but it's fake. So the ski industry is a great example of this, right? Every single time I go to get a pass, the price goes up every year. And so they're like, free markets, the free market. Okay, well, why aren't you subject to the actual free market when it comes to wages for your employees? Instead, which would mean no importation of labor. And in order to get Americans to come to your ski resort and work, you have to pay them the market wages they expect. That's the free market, right? But it's only on the side that I have to pay for that I'm being subject to the free market. You are not. You're actually getting a government special favor to drive down the wages of Americans. And we have to get a handle on this. If we don't get a handle on this, we're going to get wiped out in the midterms. And we'll probably get wiped out permanently, because once the Democrats do amnesty, and they will, I think it's done. There's no point. I mean, you can be as conservative as you want. I just think at that point you may have to just give up and realize that it's too far gone. There's nothing to be done. You go to major cities in America now, they don't even feel like America. It's full of foreigners. And when I say that, I'm not saying anything racial. I'm saying it's literally like people who, some people don't even speak English. Everybody has an accent. And then you're like, was anyone here born in America? Anybody? Is it like, how am I a minority in a major American city? This is just weird. Marsgate says, some time ago, I was reading some UN formation material at the State Department, and they had language in there about moving people around without the people's consent. No, the open borders thing is like a real thing. They took that right away from the citizens, and it has hit the U.S. hardest all these years. Yeah, we've had floods and floods and floods of people coming in, and we still have them. I mean, the other one I wanted to talk about, we have a few minutes here, is the H-1B visa program, which is a total scam. And here, let me play you. This guy's going to make me upset, but this is Representative Krishnamurthy from Illinois. I don't know if he likes these losers.
People from India or China or Sweden, it doesn't matter. And so when you put this, what I call it a tax, $100,000 tax on this group of people who, by the way, fill some of the most kind of exquisite technical roles in our economy, and many of whom have gone on to incubate companies, employing hundreds of thousands of people. You're basically pushing these people away in the first instance, and then probably getting people here to rethink whether they should stay. And you're seeing it all over the place. And now, that kind of attitude means that I fear that increasingly companies here are going to offshore the work. Because you only have two choices, Grace. You can either onshore the talent or offshore the work. These companies are not going to just sit by and not do the work. And so that's why, especially...
Okay. So, first of all, he was born in India. Okay. Came here as a kid. He's talking about the $100,000 fee on H-1B visas. His claim is that these Indians and Chinese people, it's primarily the Indians make up like 70% of H-1Bs, and then China is the next biggest one, that they have all these special skills. I'm just going to tell you right now, that is complete and utter bullshit. And the fact that there's Americans that even fall for this crap is shocking to me. Most of these people actually probably don't have skills at all. There's so much scamming in India. They get fake degrees. And what happens is that you'll get one person that comes here from a family, they'll get the job, and then suddenly they'll bring in all their family members and start filling other jobs. And a lot of the family members won't even have any skills, and they will train them with what they need to know in order to do the job. I was talking about the same cultural exclusion issue, right? Well, this is happening with all these Indians coming here. There's been a real shift. Like I think I've talked about this on the show before. Like, my parents came in the 70s. They were a minority, and assimilation was expected, and they assimilated. They speak. Well, most Indians already know how to speak English if they're educated, but they speak English at work. They're not speaking their mother tongue at work. Today, that is different. And I was hearing about a friend who works in a place where the team is all H-1B Indians from overseas and one white girl. And the H-1Bs are all speaking in their mother tongue to each other with the white girl at the meetings. That's number one, discriminatory. She should actually file a complaint. Number two, because I think that's discrimination on national origin. Also, though, it's obviously going to be culturally exclusionary, and it's probably going to hurt her ability to advance in the company because she doesn't know what those Indian people are saying. For all you know, they could be talking about her the whole time, which is just trashy and disgusting. But I don't know why they're even speaking their mother tongue at work at all. The whole thing's offensive. But when you actually dig into the H-1B program, what you realize is that these people don't have special skills. They just work for less. They're willing to work longer hours and not demand anything because Indian, my parents are from India, but like the culture is much more money-based than it is quality of life-based. So they love money and they will do anything to make a ton of money. They'll work the crazy hours. They'll never file a complaint. They're not going to demand vacation time. They are not like Americans. But we should not have to compete against them for jobs. And he's wrong. He's 100% wrong. He thinks that, they're going to offshore the jobs. No, they're not. Because those Indians are not as talented as American students are at all. They're not as talented as American engineers. I worked at a tech company. The Americans are amazing. When you get these talented people in there, they're really phenomenal, but you have to pay them a higher wage than you have to pay an H-1B person. That's just how it works because they're going to expect higher wages. And I think they should. The wages are supposed to be higher than they are now. They would be much higher if it wasn't for the H-1Bs that keep coming in. So you can I don't think there'd be any offshoring because I don't think the Indian tech talent is actually that great. And let's say there is. I'm okay with that. I would actually prefer that than importing tons of H-1Bs that are actually changing our more American cities. They're not making it better. I saw this thing in Dallas where it's getting filled with Indians, these H-1B Indians. And they had this thing where they had a song that they made, and it's actually a catchy song. And when I was growing up, people would have thought that was really cool because it wasn't like Indians were like flooding the country like this. Now, though, people see it as a negative because they're like, dude, like, what is going on? This is Dallas. Why is Dallas looking like little India now? And I think what I think it shows is that it's too much at once and it's flooding the country. And honestly, at the bottom line is they're suppressing our wages, they're taking our jobs, and they steal our jobs. And the other piece is Indians tend to be very racist against Americans of all races. And so when they get into these companies, they discriminate against the Americans and push you out and don't hire you. And so suddenly you can have a company that was started by like a white guy and had like an American employees. They can all get pushed out by Indians because of cultural discrimination that happens, caste discrimination, all this stuff they do. None of this is positive. Okay, we're almost at time. So let me just say this. We need to end all of these temporary visa programs, all of them. We need to send all the people here on them home. Like, go back to your country and fix it. Because at the end of the day, American wages are not rising because of these programs. And if we keep on the path we are on with high inflation and wages that are stagnant, we are going to end up destroying our middle class and destroying any cohesion that's left in our culture at all. And the end result is going to be some sort of a revolution that will make this at the end so it doesn't look like the America that we've all grown up to love. And it'll make it so that really the American dream is no longer attainable for the everyday person anymore. Now, I don't want to live in that country. I want to live in the country where if someone goes to school, they do the right things, or they don't have to go to college, but you do the right things, you work hard, and you can make it. That's the American dream. And you can make it in your own way. We need to get back to that. That requires ending all these programs. And I would say ending all legal immigration for a good 50 to 100 years. With that, this has been the Goud Crowd. Thank you for listening. We're on every Monday from 5 to 7 p.m. Although I do not think we will be on next Monday because it is my birthday and I would like to be able to, it is my birthday. So I will not be on next week because I will be celebrating my birthday. With that, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much for listening to the